Today I'm going to talk about cables, plugging in your stuff, and getting your levels. Hey, I'm Steve Smith, and I've spent hundreds of hours recording things that are on records. I've got five things that you might want to consider when you're plugging in your microphones, instrument, cables, and setting your levels so that you can get a good sounding recording. Let's go! So why do you need to know? Boring engineer stuff, right? All these cables, different ends, who cares? Well, if you don't know which cable to use, you're going to go to the music store, you're going to buy the wrong one, you're going to get frustrated, and some of them look kind of similar, and you might end up using the wrong one. So if we go through this, there are really only a couple of basic cables you're going to end up using. Let's figure out what those are so you have the right stuff. Number one. So yes, we're digging into the basics today, but if you don't know how to plug in your gear, this stuff is important. So this is a mic cable. People will call it a mic cable, an XLR cable. You'll even hear people call it a Canon cable or a Canon connector. This is an instrument cable or quarter-inch connector. Quarter-inch because of this measurement here. It has two conductors on it. So this is what you use to plug in an electric guitar, electric bass, and some keyboards or synths. This is a TRS cable, and this is where people get confused and mess up. It has, don't know if you can see that, it has three conductors on it. It's the same end as what's on a headphone cable. Don't use this as an instrument cable. Number two. Okay, let's cable up. I'm going to show you two different microphone systems. This is the most basic microphone. It's going to go into the preamp. So we get our cable. It only goes in one way. The pins are sticking out. So that's because the signal flow is going from the microphone to the preamp. It only goes in one way. Don't force it. That's cabled in. The other end, which I've got here, pins going that way, are going to go to the preamp or audio interface. This is another kind of setup that is common. It's not quite as basic, but some of you may end up getting microphones or have microphones like this. So this has many pins on here. I'm not even going to count them, but it has a different power requirement. It needs actually a power supply. So we plug that into there. The pins, of course, facing the same direction as is typical. Here's the other end, and then it's got this box that's a power supply. So there's two plugs on here. One of them has many matching the microphone. That goes in there. Give it a click. And then we're still going to go back to an XLR cable. This is going to go from this box to the preamp. So this is supplying power to that microphone, and the signal is going to come out of here. Again, pins pointing in the direction. So get your XLR cable, plug it into here. It's going to need power, and this is going to go to your preamp or audio interface. Now, just a quick tip about cabling. If you can wrap it around the mic stand several times so that you don't have any pressure on this when you plug it in, your cables will last a lot longer. And if it's a mic like this that comes with a special cable, I really want to try and preserve this cable because they're harder to get and I'd have to special order it, and my studio could be down for a significant amount of time if I can't find that. I just pulled this preamp out of my rack over here. We're going to have a look at the front and the back of it. Alright, here's the back of the preamp. We've got mic 1 and mic 2, so this is a stereo unit. They might not all be, but your microphone would go into here. So again, the pins are going in that direction. This would be the cable coming from your microphone, and you'd plug it in like that. The signal is going to have to come out. So out 1 will match mic 1, out 2 will match mic 2. So this one here, we would plug that in, and this line would go to your computer audio interface. There are also these line cables. Now, this is how studio gear operates, the level between pieces of studio hardware. So this would be a choice between the mic or the line. Mic 1, line 1 will both come out out 1, but you would select which one. They don't both come out at the same time. Okay, here's the front of that particular unit. This is the switch I was talking about where you would select if it goes into the microphone input or the line input. So if it's out, mic; if it's in, line. The other important thing to know is if you have a mic that needs phantom power, you would push that in to turn the microphone on. This is a really famous and well-known preamp. So on this one here, the way you select between line and mic is by switching over at this point. This way goes to line and gives you more level. This way goes to mic and gives more level. The simplest way to run a preamp, most have two knobs, input and output, is to turn the output all the way up and then to adjust the level here. Now experienced engineers will do something a little bit different. If you're just starting out, that is the safest and cleanest way to run your preamp. Number 3. This is my preferred compressor for recording vocals. If you don't have one, don't worry about it, and if you don't know how to operate one of these, just leave them out. A lot of people will say you have to have it. I've recorded many vocals that have been really good and ended up on records without a compressor. Signal chain microphone cabled to preamp, compressor or no compressor, and then over to audio interface, and that's going to go directly into the computer. Let me just jam on compressors for a little bit. In the signal chain, a professional recording engineer will want to use one. It can really be an enhancement and offer some control and some flavor to the recording. If you don't know how to use it or you don't have one, don't worry about it. Number 4. Alright, so I've set up this microphone going into that red preamp over there, and I've set a level. Alright, so here's a look at Pro Tools. If you take a look here, you'll see the top is 0, so everything we talk about is minus. -5, -10, -15, all the way down. Now the level that I've got right now is about right. You want to be topping out between -10 and -6 on the very loudest parts. It's better to err on the side of low than high, because if I go really high, you see how that went red right there? That could be distortion. Okay, here's logic. It gives you a little indication of how hot you're running. You can see I'm sort of in the zone here between -6 and -10. You won't go over if you're staying there, but remember, it doesn't need to be too hot. Last one, number 5. Alright, last thing in the chain is your monitoring. You don't have speakers on when you're recording because all the sound coming out of the speakers will get into the microphone, and you want isolation. That way we can turn the vocal up or down, add reverb, without adding that to the entire thing that might be leaking from the headphones into the microphone. So this is important to consider. I know that you're going to want to turn the headphones up because it creates a certain energy and it really makes you feel it. Try and learn to create that energy without blasting your eardrums out for a couple reasons. One, your ears are going to get really fatigued and you could do permanent damage. The other one is, if you've got this leaking through, then it gets onto the whole track and we can't process the vocal in the ways that we like to make it sound as good as it can. After you start recording, listen to what you're recording by itself very carefully for a couple things. One, is there too much leakage coming out of the headphones into the microphone, or are there other sounds? One thing that's unexpected that could happen is called latency, and that's when you hear an echo. So what's happening is you sing, the sound's going into the computer, but then it takes a long time to come back through into your headphones, and it's really hard to sing that way. That's controlled by something called the buffer. Here it is in Ableton. It's just in the preferences. This number here, there's a pull down menu. The bigger the number, the longer it takes. The shorter the number, the quicker the route. The trick is, if the number is too short, your computer may not be able to deal with it, and it can cause crackling and other problems. So you have to find a happy medium between the smallest number you can get here and the ability for your computer to take control and not have crackly or other distortion problems. Today we talked about the cables that you're going to encounter, mic cable, XLR, or line or instrument cable, and if you're going to record a guitar or a bass, all the principles still apply. This one often will just plug into that. It could be on the front or the back of your preamp, but there's always going to be a spot for it. Then we talked about the flow of the cabling, microphone or instrument to preamp, preamp to compressor if you have one, and then to audio interface, and then that should get your signal into the computer. Then we talked about level. So the top is 0, -10 to -6 is a good range for the loudest spots. And the last thing is monitor level. So if the monitor level, the headphone level, is too loud, it's going to leak into the microphone and you're going to get parts of the track, which could even change later, into the recording. So what do you do now? Well, you make sure you have the right cables. 1/4-inch cables for 1/4-inch cable places, not TRS cables. TRS cables, tip ring sleeve, for those uses. XLR cables, get better quality cables if you can. In the end, it'll serve you better, they'll last longer, it'll end up being cheaper. Plug in your signal chain, mic, preamp, interface. Some of you may have a preamp and an interface all in one. That's pretty simple. Set your level correctly so that you're not getting crazy stuff going on like distortion. And lastly, don't have the headphones too loud so you don't get that unwanted leakage. Let me leave you with one final thought, and that is, go hit the red button. Record yourself. Get better. Raise your skill level. Share what you're doing with the world. I've got nothing but respect for you if you're putting yourself out there. And while we're talking about buttons, it would be pretty awesome if you would hit the subscribe button. Talk to you later. Bye. Oh. I forgot. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. Anything about cabling, putting your studio together, just let me know. I'll do my best to help you out. Now, see you later. Bye.